This September, chess returns to where history began. Samarkand, the legendary Silk Road city where the world's oldest chess pieces were found. A crossroads of ideas, culture, and now competition. The FIDE Grand Swiss 2025. 170 of the world's strongest players. Open and women's sections. 2 golden tickets to the candidates tournament in each. A record prize fund. World champions. Rising stars. All with a single goal. Every move brings them closer to the candidates. Every game could shape their future. September the 3rd to the 15th. Samarkand, Uzbekistan. Watch it all live on the FIDE YouTube channel.
Was a day where everything changed, and it was because themselves at the top. They'll be playing each other today, and then we have a whole load of people a whisker away on just 5 points, and some of the big names in chess. Miro, I mean, what do you make of this? It just still feels like anything is possible.
Well, anything is possible, and those on 4.5, and I believe people who do not feel fit in our screen, that you have your Nepos there, Aronians, Vidits, and so on and so forth. So, no, Vidit is on our screen. So, I mean, people on 4.5 should not be ruled out of the competition. Well, the big day for sure, big day for unexpected leaders, I would say, because Nihal Sarin, remember, in yesterday's interview, he mentioned himself, I wasn't expecting to be leading the tournament. It feels nice, but I didn't have a special plan. I think that was precisely his words in the interview. Vaishali leading the tournament.
For the women.
For the women, 6.
Half a point ahead of
6 out of
Katarina
7. That's one score.
It is a big score, 6. 7. The FIDE Grand Swiss seems to be her event. She won the event in 2023. We'll see whether she can make it a double. There are plenty of players with 5 points. 19-year-old Yuxin Song is very much up there if she can win. And Bibisara Astabaeva, she will take down Vaishali as she faces her today. And talking about the standings, let's have a look at the pairings. Of course, we have 2 co-leaders. They are facing off against each other. Matthias Blubaum has the white pieces, Nihal Sarin, and the 2 players will be thinking, what approach should I take? Should I take a lot of risk? Should I perhaps play a little bit more stable chess? And we also have fire on the board as Ali Reza Farujda plays against Hans Niemann. And what other matches, Miro, take your fancy?
Well, anything really. Maksudlu against Giri, I was thinking, can be anything, because Parham, after a loss, of course he'd like to bounce back, but Giri ever so solid, like maybe out of all those in the top in the top of standings. Anish Giri strikes as someone who tries to play correct. Well, take risks, but minimal risks maybe, and all of his games are like level, or he's like overtakes slowly, very classical style.
He's playing someone who, quite frankly, is a bit of a brawler on the chessboard.
Absolutely, and that's why it makes it so interesting. Who'll prevail? I mean, first of all, stylistically, and what will be the outcome? Because if you force Anish into a brawl, he might prove to be not a bad brawler.
Well, we will see. And also, just to mention, we'll be also following the game, a very important game, actually, probably all eyes of India, I would say, is going to be on this game. It is between Gukesh against Divya, and here we have the results of the pairings for the women. And Vaishali will be playing against Bibisara Asalbeva. The two played each other in 2023. It was a victory for Vaishali. Let's see whether she can repeat that success. Katerina Lagno playing probably an old friend, old rival, Maria Muzicuk. And then we have Antonetta Stefanova playing against 19-year-old Yuxin Song, and Tan Zhongyi facing off against Sulakidu. Interestingly enough, we have 3 former women's world champion playing on consecutive boards.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, the players are getting ready. We are ready. I almost feel like I cannot wait for the games to begin. And here we have one of the stars of round 7, Matthias Blubaum. He's already beaten Pragg. Yesterday, he beat Arjun Erigaisi with the black pieces. Will he be able to take down their countrymate Nihal Sarin? Well, we'll find out later on.
Yeah, we'll find out. And Matthias Blubaum, he seems to be on the solid side as well, does not take unnecessary risks. So it'll be very interesting to watch. And that's the man himself, Hans Niemann, who joined us twice in our studio, right, after yesterday's roller coaster game as well. Right, it was a very short game.
But he actually found the perfect strategy to beat the young 14-year-old Adomish.
Yeah, when he said simplify with the youngsters, and I thought like a couple of years ago, a lot of people in the world would say so facing Hans.
Right.
so it was funny to hear it from him. You should simply against the youngsters.
He went into yesterday's game, this is Hans, with a game plan. He wanted to simplify, get him into an end game, but he ended up playing a very sharp...
Something wild,
something concrete, something wild. And the handshake, the clocks have been pressed, it's rock and roll time as we see E4 being played on the board between Abhimanyu Mishra and the homegrown talent that is Nordibek Abdusatorov. So we see E4, C6. Oh, my day just got up based on this next move. So if he steps up E5, then that means he's in a mood for a fight. If he goes knight to C3, well, I was going to say this one is a lot more, well, it's called the classical. I was going to say a lot more classical because it's called the classical. Anyhow, and here the onus is on Nordibek to decide what he wants to do. He can take on E4, and then from there he has many approaches. Come out with a bishop, come out with a knight.
Yeah, I guess you take, and then 3 lines are bishop to F5, knight to D7 supporting knight F6, or an immediate knight to F6.
Which is the most trendy. Now this particular variation is one of the most solid ones for white. White enjoys that extra pawn in the center, so has some nice space advantage, and this is going to be interesting. Is Nordibek going to play the fashionable knight to F6?
Knight to F6,
yes,
right.
He does.
Knight to F6, where white captures on F6, black takes with the E pawn. And yeah, that's a very, very tricky structure that I believe was reevaluated kind of recent years. Because if you think of it, it's your Rui Lopez exchange variation where, sides are mirrored, right? So the bishop b5 line. But in the exchange Rui Lopez, at least black gets a pair of bishops. Here, not really. And yet, this is considered to be playable and playable for black.
The whole reasoning, though, is, you'll laugh at this, is that black has one extra pawn in front of their king, makes it that little bit more safer, and you have one open line on e4, E line to contest.
Yep. So c2, c3. That's precisely how they start, because they want to develop bishop d3. And Nordiberg is thinking here, main move, of course, being bishop d6, but I believe some other stuff being tried.
Yep, I can see that bishop d6 is a move that I have played, and there are other continuations.
So you did play this one, right?
Yes.
After bishop d6, bishop d3, what would you do? Castles?
Castles, and then after queen c2, there's this trendy h5 line to go h4.
So there is this line that Iovi apparently played. No check yet, h5 first, right? h5 first, so there is that. And there is...
You can also play it very solidly with h6 as well.
Can you do this? Do you know there is this sideline which I find amazing? Knight a6 goes to c7, they wait, and very often they don't castle, they just go h5 and king f8 and push the h-pawn in.
Okay.
And when I've seen it for the first time, it looks ridiculous, but then I figured out there are games of reasonably strong players, and it's not as easy to refute as you would think.
Well, it's a bit annoying, right? Because usually white, gets some play. Like either you're forcing the pawn on h5 to advance to h4, and just to go knight a7, knight c7,
knight a6,
knight c7. I mean, the also thing is that you really want to be securing the d5 square for a piece.
So castle played, and... yeah, I believe we can explore some other games, because this one is for now very theoretical, and I suggest we check the outcome of this kind of battle in theory knowledge after some 15 moves being played.
Right. And both these players are on 5 points, and they're playing on board 3. So let's go to the top, where we saw Matthias Bluebaum. He was waiting for Nihal Sarin. Presumably, Nihal showed up. Yes, he's there, but ironically enough, Bluebaum is not. But how did this game develop?
Queen's Gambit accepted, and Bluebaum went for knight f3, which is a very, very solid move. Knight f6, e3, and Nihal Sarin is thinking. So I wonder if there is anything else to do other than your classical e6 and so on. What do we have here? 2 wins for Nihal Sarin in the previous 3 classical games that they've played.
Does that surprise you that we have such the history between the pair? That it's Nihal that has got the upper hand, but then again, 3 games isn't really too much data.
Right. In fact, I wonder where they could play these 3 games, because Bluebaum, I don't think he played a lot of round robins. Neither did Nihal Sarin, so it must have been like World Team something or Olympiads.
Olympiad, definitely.
Probably Olympiads.
Olympiad. And they also play. I'll find out for you if you give me 1 second. I checked this morning, and it was in Chennai Olympiad, Nihal won, and also at the Sharjah Masters back in 2017.
Sharjah Masters, yeah, which is apparently a very, very strong open tournament. Not as strong as our Grand Swiss, but one of the stronger ones.
It's pretty up there, yeah.
One of the stronger ones. Anyway, bishop c4 and c5 played, and this is as solid as it gets. As solid as it gets. At least, like if Bluebaum wanted to be aggressive, he could have gone e4 on move 3. And
Nihal plays something very similar to this against Gumulash. in round 6. And we felt that he could be in a spot of bother.
Right. There was like he won a very quick game, and so people could have forgotten that he might have had some problems in the opening. And this early C takes D4, I think, or rather was considered not to be the most precise, because
well, that game I can tell you went with bishop to E7, just like Nihal is doing right now. Knight to C3. Castles.
Rook E1,
Rook
I
E1,
believe.
A6.
A6, bishop F4. And we found it strange, right?
Yeah.
Bishop F4, knight C6, or B5 first? Knight C.
He went B5 first.
He went B5 first.
Perhaps that was an inaccuracy.
Bishop to B3,
bishop to B3. And now bishop to B7.
And
Rook
white
C1.
went rook to C1, and
then
he
black-
had to go bishop B4.
Exactly.
He had to go bishop B4.
Because D5 was such an unpleasant threat. And after bishop to B4, not bishop to G5, but we were analyzing
G5,
knight G5 and saying, you know,
That
maybe
looked-
white has a dangerous initiative, you know, sacrifices on F7. So the question is, will Matthias go into this preparation? Does Nihal Sarin have an improvement?
Yeah, they do repeat the set game for now. Knight C3 castles, 8 moves already following the previous game. And now, you can go rook E1, you can go bishop F4 to kind of remain in the same game scenario.
Well, only time will tell. We'll leave this game right now, and we'll leave everyone on a little bit on a cliffhanger. Is Matthias gonna go into the same position that Nihal played into in round 6, or is he going to vary? We'll come back to it. But let's move on down to Alireza Fujda against Hans Niemann.
It's got to be a spicy one, Yovi.
It has to. And I think it was this game back in 2023 at the FIDE Grand Swiss, where they both, Alireza and Hans, came all excited into the commentary room, and they wanted to share with us their game. And it was like super mad, very chaotic. There it actually opened with D4, and there it is 2 draws for Alireza and Hans Niemann, but 1 win. And I do also remember that they played a very chaotic game in the Sinkfield Cup.
Yeah, the scandalous Sinkfield Cup. Yeah, I think Alireza was white back then, or was it?
Hans, I think, was white.
Hans was white. Yeah, there was some sharp game. Again, sacrificed the piece, and Alireza somehow barely survived. I think. Yep. Anyway, so now Rui Lopez castles bishop e7, an invitation to Berlin potential. What Berlin? Marshall. No. Anything is Berlin. Like they've ruined.
Well, in fairness,
ruined the opening.
In fairness, the Marshall is like the new Berlin, in the sense that the lines have been worked out, and you often play them.
Yeah.
You allow the Marshall, you play the Marshall to get a draw.
Exactly, and to my disappointment, because I always thought like Marshall counterattack was super exciting to analyze, even like with the older computers. And you remember sometimes computers would go wrong, and this famous Kramnik-Leko game from where Kramnik played all the moves according to his preparation and ended up in a lost position because Leko just had kind of more powerful computer or left it overnight or something. Right, so nowadays it's so exhausted, so entering the Marshall counterattack, the problem means like this particular drawish endgame with an extra pawn that you will have to hold. So all the excitement is taken away, and that's why white experiments with various kind of D3 setups. In our case, it's 6 D3. B5, bishop B3, D6, and A2, A3, because you need to take care of this bishop. Black was threatening knight to F5.
Yeah. And you need to preserve that light squared bishop. And here, well, this is still very much in the main realms of theory.
There should be a lot of games,
Knight A5 with the idea of going C5. I've even got like games where black has gone bishop E6. You might even see bishop G4. just for fun.
Yeah, there have been games with bishop g4. I believe this was debated in Carlsen-Nepo match.
Well, what do you think? We're going to expect knight a5, castles. Castles keeps it flexible, like leaves this idea of going knight to a5. Castles.
Yeah, he castles.
Just postpones the decision, and
I believe knight c3 is the move.
you can also play rook e1, h3. I mean, more or less in this type of position, it feels like anything goes.
Right. It's more about, yeah, like concept and your vision after 15 moves, not the precise move right here, right now, I feel like. Yeah.
That sounded like
Anything,
words that you'd use in like some HR meeting. It's the vision, guys.
Yeah, it's the vision.
Yeah, no, completely true. H3. I mean, yeah, you definitely, it's more of a plan-based opening. I expect knight to c3, but it's very interesting because Alireza yesterday, he played a really uncomfortable opening for Yakuboev to handle with the white pieces. I mean, so for Alireza was prepared to take big risks. You know, he played unusual chess, allowed his opponent initiative, and was just trusting on the fact that his opponent would burn the time on the clock. And here he's gone for a completely different strategy.
Yeah. So today there'll be a lot of maneuvering and pushing for like really minimal advantages, if any. Right, and what we can see potentially is knight here and bishop to not d7, bishop to e6, and the moves are knight d5 or bishop e6. And I've already mentioned that it's very hard for me to kind of figure out what kind of position is this one. It's also hard to tell.
Well, we might see it, you know, knight c3 played.
Knight c3 played. Yeah. So the alternatives are bishop e6, bishop to g4. Bishop g4, I believe, the most popular, but recently fell out of fashion. And there is knight a5 followed by c5 or followed by bishop e6.
Well, the decision is in Hans Niemann's hands.
So we had it as most exciting game, secretly, right? But it's not that it won't be exciting. It will not be as exciting as just yesterday, the game from the very start, right? Because that was wild from, say, move 5, move 6. Here, for now, it's a very, very calm maneuvering stage, which allows us, I guess, to check other games.
So let's move down. We've already looked at the game the start between Abhimanyu Mishra and Nordebek Abdusatorov. So maybe let's have a look and see what followed after we left it. So we were expecting that after castles, this h5, h4, very trendy line. It is, in fact, on our board.
So knight e2, rook to e8, queen c2, h5. That is precisely the line that Yovi meant. h4, h3, knight goes to d7, to f8, and bishop c7. So these are somewhat mysterious moves, I imagine, if you haven't happened to know this line. Yeah. Basically, it's very hard to make progress with whites from now on, right? So the H pawn kind of restricts white's ability to expand on the king side. Exchanging the bishops is not great. Oh, well, f4 was played. f4, f5, I guess, which is kind of strategically quite double-edged. Right, because you weaken the diagonal, but you restrict the f8 knight and the c8 bishop. Black replied with queen d6. Good luck going f5 on the next move, queen h2. Right. So one of the big questions in this line is that if white eventually starts kind of pushing his majority, the queenside pawns, how to react with black. Because sometimes you don't react at all, sometimes you're supposed to go c5, and now, for instance, yeah, like c5 is not a great move here, because white takes, but sometimes something like this could lead. Yeah, here I guess white's just better, but sometimes it leads to some sort of a fortress, right? I mean,
Right.
you get this protected passed pawn, but you can't really go through because black would get f5, control all the central squares and so on. So c4 could be a move.
I think c4 is the main move that I see.
Theory, right?
Yeah, this is still within the theory. And then, okay, there's been 9 games, and 3 games have continued with black playing the pawn sacrifice f5.
f5.
Yeah.
Where I can see it now, because the computer kind of shows the line how it thinks that this still will develop, and black apparently wants to go to h7, f6, and eventually to e4. So white kind of has to take f5, and then bishop takes, queen takes, and the move is rook to e6. So piling the rooks on the e file. Hitting the knight protects the d4 pawns. It's very awkward for white, despite having an extra pawn.
White has gone f2, f4.
Yeah.
And suddenly, black's position is unraveling. You know, you got rook a, e8. There's pressure against d4. This bishop on d2 is.
So if I wanted to play moves like this, defend the d4 pawn, and you go here.
5. Which is like the
main
main
I can go
point of
f5,
this.
that's true. And generally it seems I'm struggling with the moves. Because if I move the knight, what happens if I move the knight? Then you'll take f4 eventually, right?
Yeah.
You'll take on e1.
Also,
I can take with the bishop though. Yeah, that's...
well, there's also, let's not forget, d4 is weak. So you
D4
don't
is-
even need to kind of swap on e.
Yeah,
e1,
f5.
yeah.
All that, yeah, d4.
Takes.
Yes, that was one potential
You've
scenario.
got bishop b6 as well in the air. Because you can't go c5 because of bishop takes.
Yeah, you're right. Bishop b6 probably wins the pawn back. Probably wins the pawn back. There's no c5 because bishop c5 and there's a pin.
Yeah. And now after f5, you go rook takes rook. And
Yeah,
pawn
f5
falls on
here.
d4.
Take on. Maybe you can take
It's
d4.
actually-
Maybe you can take d4 immediately if you wanted to.
Yeah. But okay, it just means that this is actually quite a thematic position. But okay, he has to find this concept of going f5 should white play c4. So potentially very tricky. Might be just a memory test for the time being, but we'll see how both players fare in that. Down. Let's continue on to Paramak Sudlu. He was the comfortable leader, like from round 3. And yesterday, there was a blip. And he lost to Nihal Sarin. And I say blip because it was just a one-move blunder in time scrambles. You know, it was a completely crazy position, one bad move. And
Right, and it was also, I wouldn't say uncharacteristic, but yeah, like, you know, kind of proactive blunder. Sometimes you blunder your opponent's strat, and there the move that kind of would keep the game level was just queen takes knight to regain the material. So Parham thought that he was winning going after this checkmate, which wasn't there. Right, so he was very kind of aggressive, wanted to win that one. Anyway, so now, today he plays this line, I think it's called the McKenna's variation, at least, yeah, e4. And the main move would be d5 here, or rather, what was considered to be the main move. Anish goes c5, which allows e5, knight g8, and white gets a lot of space. White wins the tempo for development, but then black potentially has kind of pressure on this e5 pawn. So now, main move, by far most popular move, is knight to f3, knight to c6, and then white would go d4 and capture with the knight. And this is quite classical. You have your Kasparov-Beliavsky games from 1990s. You have Rajabov-Dingley ran the game. Rajabov won to win the World Cup, and so on and so on. Right. And d4, a little bit less explored, but seems to be kind of a new fashion or returning fashion. d4, cd4, queen d4. So it's somewhat resembles the Alapin Sicilian,
yes.
Right? So there is a line in Alapin Sicilian where white would go d4 and then take with the queen. Knight to c6, queen f4, d6, knight f3, knight to h6, queen e4, d5.
Yeah, and I'll tell you something, the clock times indicates that Anish is within his preparation, barely used any time on the clock, whereas Aksudlu has burnt more than 14 minutes on this position.
Was it 14 or 4? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because they start 1 hour 40.
Right, yeah.
And I factored in, very unlike me, the increment. Okay, well, it's pretty close between them. 4 draws with 1 win to Anish.
Yep.
And well, this is one of the things that makes Anish Giri one of the most dangerous players. I mean, he's incredibly well armed. I always get the impression that he has a whole team with him, just, looking up those novelties. He knows his stuff. Parham also, I mean, as he showed us here in the studio, also
he knows his variations very well.
He's worked extremely hard for this event. So he wants to do well. And now there's a choice to be had, right? We get to this position after knight takes e5, bishop takes h6. This is what I was coming to.
Yeah, what's interesting there, the only game that was played was bishop takes h6 here, and then knight has taken on e5. Let me check. So takes, knight e5, and black didn't take on e5, but went queen b6. And this was the game between Mateusz Bartel and Tabatabai. And Tabatabai won with black. So now Parham seemingly kind of restricts black's option, takes on e5, takes on h6, gh6, let me get to the fun, but gh6, queen e5, rook to g8.
And I actually have also another game in the database.
Now we've probably transposed into something.
The Bazakutsa, playing with the white pieces against Daniel Fernandez.
Yeah.
And they're
very recent one, 2024.
24, and that game ended with rook to d1 was the move played, bishop d7, and then knight to e4.
Bishop d7, knight
at first sight, this looks really scary for black. The knight is coming into f6.
Yeah, but there's a check, and there's a check. Like it's rather awkward. Like, I mean, after you've played knight e4, you probably go king e2, but that's quite awkward. And then they drop the bishop to e7, got both f6 and d6. I guess planning for queen c8, bishop c6 here.
Yeah, okay, well, I agree that wasn't the best. So maybe you can't go knight to e4.
We'll see, yeah, so rook d1, bishop d7, and...
Well, the question for black is, for white, rather, how are you going to even develop the light square bishop?
Right.
Is it bishop e2?
You go bishop e2, do you go g3, bishop g2?
But if you go bishop...
Yeah, like g3, I'm somewhat afraid of moves like... Oh, first off, computer tells me that there's rook g5. That's one unorthodox way of, chasing this queen away from e5.
Yeah.
Queen h8 is not very smart because the queen apparently gets stuck there. So black would go queen a5, and then the next. That's funny. Queen a5. Yeah. Anyway. So there is that. Anish seemingly knows it very well. You are right. Barely spend any time.
Dangerous position, I would say, for Parham, because, black is the one with all the dynamic chances, the bishop pair. Yes, his pawn structure is bad, but it is the bishop on f1 that is going to be white's problem, how to develop it. we'll keep our eyes on this one. We'll move down to the game between Vincent Keimer and Vidit, the defending Grand Swiss champion. And Vidit is on 5 points, Vincent Keimer 4.5 points. So Vincent, I would say, is now in a position where he really has to press if he wants to finish in the top two.
Right. And no, but he still played the very Keimer opening, right? So he faced the Berlin and he went for the D3 and bishop captures c6 line, which is, yeah, I guess something that you do play for advantage nowadays, but it's not much. It's definitely not much for white, if anything. A4 and b6, very, very solid line for black.
Solid, but still, Vincent will have some ideas and some positive memories because he does have a positive score against Vidit, having won one game, drawn 3. And he's got the white pieces, he can dictate the flow of the game. Not much happening here, I would say, so let's move on down. And do remember that we do have individual streams. So apart from this particular show, you can actually follow dedicated cameras and you can follow the games of the top players and you can analyze everything move by move, watch their reactions in complete silence. And you can find those links in the description of this broadcast below. So let's move on down and have a look at the game between Richard Rapport against Pragg. Now these two, when they play each other, they create magic. I remember their game from earlier this year where Pragg had the white pieces, and this is what I was going to refer to. Richard has a very pleasant score against Pragg, and I remember the game from Uz Chess Cup earlier this year, where it was a stunning victory, almost like game of the year from Richard.
Yeah, Richard
came up with a novelty and won.
Yeah, when it works for him, he's unstoppable, and he also can play in style. Mm-hmm. Right. That's something that very often black has sacrificed a pawn, and yeah, so basically it was a ready opening where black went with d4, having the pawn on e6, right? Castles, knight to c6, e3, e5, e takes, and like if you take with the e pawn, this is known to be like pleasant for white, for the sole reason that it's a known structure, but first of all, colors reversed, so you get this with one extra tempo, and the fact that black has played e7, e6, and later on e7, e5. So you get a known position 2 tempi up, and therefore it is good for white. But the principled move is to go e4 here, knight to g5, knight d4, rook e1, bishop e7, captures on e4, bishop f5. Mm-hmm. Rook to e5, and black is expected to play c7, c6, I believe.
Yeah.
Something very solid.
You don't want to be chasing waterfalls by going knight to c2.
Yeah, knight c2,
bishop.
rook takes bishop, right?
Exactly, and the knight is going to get trapped on a1.
Yep,
so
you take that one, and white can even take on b7. So after knight a1, white can even take on b7. Oop. And then goes check on c6 and so on. So c6, there is... interestingly,
attacking the rook.
Attacking the rook, where it's still kind of a little bit awkwardly placed, because if you go to d5, it's queen f6.
Yeah,
it can get quite messy. So apparently after queen d6, one thing to do for white is to take on f5, take on b7. I do not know how to evaluate that one. So white gets 2 pawns for an exchange.
Right, but I tell you something else. Will it impact your decision? Your opponent has barely paused for thought. So Richard has got more time than he started with. He means he knows this. So do you play the most uncompromising,
No,
right? Do you
I
go
guess
queen to d6, knowing full well
I guess
that
you're
rook
trying
takes
to be
bishop?
kind of trying to play something that is positionally sound. At the
Right.
moment. Yeah, so c6, well, you do understand why you're supposed to have, compensation, right? So c6, blocking the bishop, you have this, well, nicely positioned knight on d4, and you're planning for castle, and bishop f6, and so on and so forth.
Can you tell I'm an overthinker?
No, you're absolutely right. I just didn't pay attention to the clock display in this particular game. Normally, I do try to follow. And for what I know for sure, that, well, from personal experience, like if somebody would be doing this stuff against me, that they literally spend no time, and in the position that is kind of original, not something that is played every day, that would probably cause me to spend more time. Because I would be thinking, what can they?
Is that something that you do? Something that you avoid? So we're going to keep our eye on this one. And let's move down to board 7, because there's always one game, Mirror, where everyone is taking their time in their opening. There are some people who are forgetting that this is a classical game. They do not need to rush. So they're move 19, and we have a double rook endgame. Now, what is the first up? Let's quickly backtrack and find out how we got here.
Right. So that was
First up, let's quickly backtrack and find out how we got here.
right. So there was this 4-knight